I'm inside what's called the Valley Temple on the Giza Plateau. The Sphinx is right back this way. And I'm here by myself. No other tourists. It's absolutely ridiculous, actually, why people are afraid to come to Egypt here at the end of March 2014. These stones, basically all of them, are rose granite from the Aswan Quarry, which is 500 miles away. And just get a basic sense of the scale of what you're looking at, the size of them. But not only that, the thing is that this so-called temple is so incredibly ancient and pre-dynastic. It wasn't built by the dynastic Egyptians. This is much, much older, thousands of years older. It's a Comitian site. The Comitian culture existed here long before the dynastic Egyptians ever existed. And the amount of erosion on these stones indicates the antiquity. Not only that, look at the size of them. 500 miles away is the quarry. How were these stones moved here? And how was the level of precision achieved? Such as this example in a more black granite. It's been measured by engineers. The surface, in some cases, is within 2/10 of 1 inch in being perfectly flat, and possibly even finer than that. An astonishing achievement. And what we see in Egypt, again, is we see the phenomenal work that the dynastic Egyptians, or the pharaohs, created, but they inherited a number of structures, and this so-called Valley Temple is one. So much as in Peru, the question is, why were these people working in such an incredible scale? Why would you bother working with megalithic-sized blocks like this? And the answer isn't simply because they could, though the answer is simply because they could. But it has to do with the reasoning that contact between the stones was vital. It's a lot easier to build something with mortar or concrete in between the building blocks or stones, because that means you can build quite quickly. But to have contact upon contact like this, with huge stones like this, means more than simply the idea that they were trying to earthquake-proof something. The contact probably had to do with vibration. They chose pink Aswan granite because of its very high quartz crystal content. And we know that quartz is used in modern electronics because of its vibrational piezoelectric quality. So now here that we're outside of the Valley Temple, now we're into an area of limestone. The limestone is local. The whole Giza Plateau is a massive limestone outcrop. In front of the Great Pyramid, we find this icon, which of course is commonly known as the Sphinx. And what's amazing about it, as hopefully you can make out in this video, is the fact that the Sphinx is not above ground, it's actually inside of what is called the Sphinx enclosure. So that means that the majority of the Sphinx was cut out of the bedrock. And what's even more mind-blowing about that is the fact that what you're looking at here in front, which is called the Sphinx Temple, those are the megalithic blocks that were removed during the shaping of the Sphinx. So it was not a question that a bunch of people with primitive tools like bronze chisels or whatever, axes, hoes or whatever, were hacking the Sphinx out of the bedrock. Multi-ton blocks were removed in the process, and that was actually the process of releasing the Sphinx and creating the shape that it is. The problem is that so much repair work has been done over the course of thousands of years that its original shape has been obscured, and it's quite obvious that the head has been recarved, that originally the head was larger, but during dynastic times, as in the times of the pharaohs, one of the pharaohs decided that he wanted his or a family likeness to be placed on the Sphinx. And the amount of erosion of the Sphinx is also phenomenal, and what actually that is telling us, thanks to Dr. Robert Schoch of Boston University, is that the erosion on the body of the Sphinx was not the result of wind and sand, it was the result of heavy rainfall. But you see, this whole area is desert. When would there have been enough rain for that? About 10,000 years ago. You should look up Dr. Robert Schoch's work to get more detail, but what that's telling us is that the Sphinx is older than the dynastic Egyptians. Thousands of years older, probably created by a culture pre-dynastic called the Cometians. What most people don't realize or even know about is the fact that on the Giza Plateau there are tunnels and shafts that go under the pyramids, at least 3 levels under. And as you can see, I'm walking through an area which is carved bedrock, limestone. This here is the entrance, not simply to a tomb, but this is part of the network of tunnels and chambers and shafts that run through the Giza Plateau, north, south, and east and west. It's extensive. It's not simply maybe a mile long, it's several miles, but conventional archaeology doesn't recognize what the Cometian civilization did, and that is they were the first people here, and they were the creators of these tunnels and shafts, and quite possibly the main pyramids on the Giza Plateau. So what I've been showing you and what I will show you are some of these shafts that are here, especially this one, which is massive, and I can't even see the bottom of some of these shafts that I've been looking down into. Now, why would somebody create them as tombs? It's because most of the tombs here, or if not all of them, were recycled aspects of the tunnel and shaft system. Now again, on the right-hand side, you can see that this is cut stone put into place. But on the left-hand side, this seems to be the bedrock. And the farther that I enter into here, the more you're able to see entrances, which of course are blocked off by these gates. But hopefully we'll be able to get access to some of them and see, for example, where does this opening on the right here, where does that go? Does it go to other levels below ground? Hopefully we'll find out. What I'm walking past right here on the left is a small pyramid in the shadow of the big ones. And what you can see are these cut marks here. And what that indicates is that originally there was casing stone, an exterior that was on here, which has all been stripped off and recycled by cultures for probably thousands of years. But what it's telling us is that the core of this little pyramid was the solid bedrock. So it was cut out of the bedrock, and then the casing stone was applied on top of that. And here again, you see this undulating pattern as I walk along another side of this little pyramid, or as the Comitian culture, pre-dynastic, would call a pernetter. That's where the term pyramid comes from, it's pernetter. So you see these areas where it's been cut out. This is not a quarry. This is where the casing stone locked into the little pyramid itself. And now what you're going to see is the actual evidence of that, because here again, here we have the limestone bedrock. And as I keep walking, fortunately, this side of the pyramid, or pernetter, still has the casing stone on it. Limestone again, and so incredibly heavily eroded that who knows honestly how old this structure is, when it was created. In order to find out, you'd have to ask a geologist who's a specialist on the weathering of stone, and in my mind that would be Dr. Robert Shaw. And this will make it more obvious for you. Here again we have the outer skin of the pyramid, the casing stone, and as we walk along we'll see where the casing stone has either fallen or been removed. Now, one question is, and that of course again would need a geologist, is this material, the casing stone, the same as the core of the pyramid, which is that. This is the actual carved out core of the pyramid, carved out of the bedrock, possibly from a large lump or a hill that was here. But in the case of at least one of the more famous pyramids, and I believe it was the so-called Great Pyramid, the limestone of the core is from this area. It's from the Giza Plateau. But the outer skin, the casing stone, is not from here. It's actually from another mountain in Cairo, and that's Tellura limestone. The limestone of the interior is high in magnesium, I believe, and other minerals, whereas the outer skin is a pure limestone. And so it's possible, if the Giza power plant or any other theory relating to the idea that the Great Pyramid and other pyramids were not the tombs of pharaohs, but were actually energy structures, or structures that produce some kind of energy of some sort long before the dynastic Egyptians existed, that the outer skin was actually a insulating layer, and then the core is where the actual power plant or power generator was, acting almost like a battery or like an electric wire. You have to have the insulation on the outside to keep the energy on the inside so that you can control the flow of where it goes. And then finally, for this little video, here again is where you see the inner core of this little pernetter, or so-called pyramid, but it actually has a hollow space here. You can hear even the echo. So you can see this was all carved or sculpted out, quite possibly when it was made, maybe later, but here, in that area, that is a shaft that goes down. I don't know how far down, because unfortunately we're behind another one of these gates. And then here, that stone you're looking at, that is not limestone. That is granite that was brought from the Aswan quarry about 500 miles away. And it's locked, it seemingly was at least originally locked into the structure. It's not a freestanding thing. There are no hieroglyphs or carvings. There are channels and grooves, and that looks much more functional and pragmatic than art. And what you can also notice is the incredible weathering on the surface and the cracks in it. I would have to ask a geologist, but I doubt if that is the result of simply wind and time. Very little sunlight comes in here. So it could be that this was part of what was called the ancient power plant system. And as strange as that idea may be to some of you, it's theoretically possible that there was an ancient energy generating facility here on the Giza Plateau before the time of the pharaohs, created by a civilization called the Comitians, and that this complex produced energy. I'm not necessarily saying electrical power for running light bulbs or whatever, but an energy system. And that at one point, the whole system overloaded, and that caused some of these structures to either explode or parts of them to fall off, and then the whole system shut down. And that is a theory explored by many people, and the time frame we're looking at is possibly about 12,000 years ago, the end of the last ice age, which was not a gentle event, it was globally catastrophic. And if such a global catastrophe did occur that affected possibly even the axis of the planet, making the planet go from being perfectly vertical to 23.5 degrees where it is now, that of course would shut down any electrical facility or whatever like this that was hooked into the telluric currents and water systems that run underneath the Giza Plateau. This is on top of the Giza Plateau, near the Great Pyramid, and you can see the size of these blocks. This, for example, this is one piece of stone going down, and there's no mortar in between the joins. The thing is, there's so much heavy erosion involved that it doesn't give you a clear picture of what it would have looked like when it was first made. But these are megalithic limestone blocks from the Great Pyramid area, Giza complex. And this isn't an area where tourists normally venture because the guides don't take them, but my guide is the guide, Yusuf Awiyan of the Kemet School. And his knowledge is incredibly extensive. So that was Yusuf Awiyan inside a chamber in the solid bedrock of the Giza Plateau, again close to what's called the Great Pyramid. And you heard the sonic quality of that chamber. That's why the Kemet School are the ones who know that sound and vibration was vitally important to the ancient people, pre-dynastic, who built a lot of things on the Giza Plateau. The thing is that Giza is so complicated, it's so complex in terms of the different cultures who were here making different things, that it takes an expert like Yusuf to be able to distinguish between what is Roman, what is Greek, what is New Kingdom, what is Old Kingdom, and what is Cometian, Cometian being the older. But again, you see these astonishing precision of how those limestone blocks interlock with each other with no clay, mortar, cement, or anything. So the Giza Plateau is littered with these openings all over the place, and of course some of them were used as tombs at different times, but others are huge vertical shafts going down and tunnels, different layers of tunnels going down. So it's clearly, what we're looking at is an example of recycling over the ages. The tombs were used, or the openings were used as tombs, but who made the actual openings like this one? That's been filled in, but there's no idea as to how deep and extensive it can be. There's a shaft there, or a tunnel that goes in, and I know these are not the big ones that you can see in some of my other videos. These could very well just be tombs, But there are other examples. And the other examples that I've seen that are closer to the second pyramid are shafts 12 to 15 feet wide, going down 100 feet, let's say, but filled with sand. So originally, how deep would they have been? Some of them have been filled in with rubble and garbage. But according to the Kemet School, and unrecognized by many conventional academics, there is a tunnel system that runs below the Giza Plateau that originally carried water north, south, east, and west. These were the ways in which water was sent from the ancient Nile through a system underneath the complex at Giza, which were a series of power or energy devices. So with Yusuf Awiyan, we're here next to the Great Pyramid, and this is where we find obvious examples of very sophisticated ancient technology. Because here, if you look really carefully, you see these vertical lines going down along the stone. Now there's scratches too, but there seems to be quite a pattern to it. As if, could this be actually a saw? Now this material is basalt, which is very hard. It's not from the local area. And so a culture with bronze chisels couldn't, or bronze saws, even with some kind of silica sand as an abrasive, could not produce that kind of fine finish as far as I can tell. And I'll show you other examples here in this little area by itself of examples of machining technology at work. Not modern machines, not dynastic Egyptian machines, but older machining technology by the Cometians. Now that, for example, you can see that's the end of where there was a saw cut of some kind. This piece broke off. The diameter of that saw blade seems to be about 1/8 of an inch, and it's not a straight cut. We'll show that in other videos. What it is, it's a curved cut. So that could be evidence of the giant circular saw. And here, these are the cuts themselves. Again, somewhere between 1/8 and 1/4 of an inch in diameter, going straight through 1, 2, 3 of them.
Through the unfinished pieces is special. But they all is so machine. But they are aware of this market. They're aware of this market. It's not new to them. But they just like to ignore it. So everything else will fit with the story that they create.
And this is the base of the Great Pyramid. And what you see is here, the bottom level here, how the bottom level fits in with the bedrock. It's a mortar-free construction. They flattened the plateau in order to build the pyramid on top of it. So again, here's the original external casing stone of the Great Pyramid. And look how tight the fit of that stone is. And another puzzling thing, as Yusuf Awiyan who's there, pointed out, is the amount of erosion of some of this stone, which was, you know, what the main pyramid is made out of, this limestone. The extent of erosion is quite astonishing. So how long would it have taken for that erosion to have taken place? You need a geologist such as Dr. Robert Schoch to discuss that. But would it have taken 1,000 years? 5,000 years? Certainly not in hundreds of years, because this is desert. It's unlikely that it was sand being blown by the wind to erode it to this extent. The Sphinx is known to have been eroded by water, possibly up to 8,000 or 10,000 years ago. So could that mean that this pyramid, the Great Pyramid, and possibly this one, the Second Pyramid, as well, are contemporary? That they pre-existed the dynastic pharaonic cultures of Egypt? That's what we're trying to find out. What most people also don't realize is the fact that on the Giza Plateau, you have the Great Pyramid and the Second Pyramid, and of course the smaller Third Pyramid. But off on this side, which is the east side, you have all of these little baby ones like this kind of size. And here you can see the casing stone is still on the exterior. There are about 30 of these. The casing stone is original, and also there are these shafts that go down. I can see the bottom. It's at least 30 or 40 feet, filled with sand, and then there's a chamber going off to the left. And this one as well. It's deeper, with chambers going off at what is now the bottom. So really, you don't build shafts for burying people. If the shafts are there, you could use them for burying people. Here's the shaft in the center of one of these baby ones. But it makes more sense that the shaft system, the tunnel system, was part of a giant water network that literally ran and still runs under the Giza Plateau. They in fact have massive pumps right near the front entrance of the Giza Plateau, and they're constantly pumping water out of it to this very day. That's another shaft. So it makes this whole area far more mysterious and interesting than the conventional explanation. And we've just been told we can go into Meres Ankh, the third tomb, which is a mastaba. Okay, so it's a tomb now, but the question is, was it constructed as a tomb? Or was it constructed as part of the water system, and then later, when this Giza system no longer functioned, that then it was turned into a tomb?